G'day guys, welcome back to the Boundary Riders Podcast. Today we're up to episode 16 and we just completed another round of the buys, round 14. Pretty big week this week. We saw a couple of teams. We saw Carlton finally break their drought of 6 losses in a row. And we also saw Port Adelaide get their 11th win in a row as well, which I'm pretty sure is a club record for them. The final eight is starting to shape itself up right now. A couple of teams as well, like Richmond and the Giants, have actually given themselves a bit of a chance to push towards the 8 towards the end of the season now with big wins for them. And there are a lot of teams teetering on that 6 to 10 spots right now, 11th spot, that are like really sitting in different positions, and it's unknown which team are going to be making the 8. But I think the top 4 is pretty much set for now. But one thing that came out of the weekend was the fact of the dangerous tackle, or the sling tackle, or who knows at this stage what sort of tackle we're looking for. But now, the question may be begged to ask, is the tackle dead? Because we've had a couple of seasons now where the bump has been supposedly dead, and I think it probably is to an extent. You can't really bump anymore. And the tackle now is almost getting pushed to you can't tackle anymore. Now, the two that were cited this weekend were Jared Berry and Lockie Whitfield. I believe those were the only two. Whitfield did get a week. Berry got away with his. And I'm not saying that he deserved a week whatsoever. I watched that game live on Friday night, and that tackle on Will Hayward was a brilliant tackle. Should have been pinned holding the ball, and I don't think anyone watching that game would have thought otherwise. That was a really bad decision from the umpire, and a really bad decision to suspend, even to tell Jared Berry that he's been suspended for rough conduct, because that was just a really good tackle. Now, the Lockie Whitfield one, I do think maybe that was worth a week. But again, I think it's really tough. I think probably because he did pin the arm and his head hit the ground, Jordan Clark, that's probably why he got a week for it, and I kind of get it. But I just think it's weak from the AFL to, yet again, really not come out and tell us what we are paying a free kick for. Because now it just seems every single time a player goes to ground and their head may hit the ground or anything like that happens, it's automatically going to be a week. And it's automatically going to be reported nonetheless. I think Jared Berry may have actually got a week if it wasn't for all the backlash that everyone was saying because it happened live on the game. That's why I think that Lockie Whitfield only got 1 week, because we've seen a lot of other players be getting treated a lot more harshly depending on what happens. And we even saw Sam Wicks get 2 weeks, which I think he probably deserved more, because I think it was a stupid act. Yes, it wasn't much in the contact, but I think when players are tackling and they're getting more weeks compared to players jumping up and hitting someone in the head, which is not a football act, I think that's crap. But the tackle, is it dead? I don't want to say it is yet, but we even saw on the commentary during that game that people are saying that in a couple of years' time there won't even be tackling in this game. And that's not what anyone wants. This is a contact sport. Sometimes players are going to just, naturally just tackle someone and maybe sling them to the ground. And if the head hits the ground, I get the one like Nathan Broad earlier in the year on Parnell. That was 100% illegal. That's 100% an illegal tackle, and it should have been weeks, and it was 4 weeks. If that was done now, midway through the season, I think it would have been 5 or 6. And honestly, I think it would have been pretty fair. But a lot of them now are just ticky-touch ones that they're automatically paying as a sling tackle because a player is, falling to ground in that sort of motion. I mean, when a player is like trying to escape a tackle, it's not like they're standing still. So I think the umpires need to blow the whistle immediately. I know they did a couple of times in games this week and every now and then, but they're not calling it quick enough. They need to, as soon as a player gets tackled, you either pin him holding the ball or you pay a ball up and you grab the ball and quickly do it. Because players are taking a while to tackle, and then the umpire's not doing anything, so eventually the play either turns into a drag to ground, or, because, if you drag them to ground, it stops the play for the player, like the opponent. They can't get the ball out if they're laying on top of the ball. So I think it's ridiculous that we've had to get to this point now when the umpires don't know what's going on, the AFL definitely don't know what they're doing, and the supporters and people who are watching the game don't know what's going on either, and the players don't either. So it's just a whole stuff up from the AFL, it's just a fuck around, and it's just getting ridiculous now. It's hard to watch games now, because I don't think any players have done it yet, like trying to cause the contact to get a high one. But it won't be long before players start doing it. And we don't want the AFL to start turning into that. We've already seen a lot of players starting to flop this year, and we don't need people to start initiating head contacts. I think is not where the AFL want to go. And we can't see... If they ban the tackle... I don't think they'll ban the tackle, but if they keep on banning all kinds of different tackles and players are going to get suspended for something that they don't know what they're doing for, I think it's just ridiculous. And it's just going to be... the start of the end of watching AFL football, really, because if there's no contact in the game, there's not a lot of reason to watch it. But nonetheless, that was probably the biggest thing to come out of this weekend, other than some of the games that went through. So I think now we'll go through the weekly votes that we do every week, or kind of a review of round 14. We started off round 14 at Adelaide Oval with Port Adelaide versus Geelong. Pretty big game. Geelong were just coming off the bye. Port Adelaide had their 10 wins in a row. So it was almost thought that Geelong could definitely take a scalp here and get their season back on track. And the first quarter and a half, it looked like that was going to happen. But Port Adelaide in the second half really stood up, led by Sam Powell-Pepper, Connor Rozee, even Dan Houston probably was the best on the ground in the end. He was massive in that game. Not so much Zach Butters. He did kind of get tagged from Tom Atkins, which he actually did a really good job, Atkins, on Butters. But in the end, I think that Port Adelaide are definitely a contender now. They've won 11 in a row. And, I mean, eventually they will get knocked off by a team. But, I mean, they're currently top on the ladder. Collingwood probably take it back next week. But at the moment, Port Adelaide sit top. So you got to give them all the credit that they deserve. With the 3-2-1 votes now, 3 votes I gave to Dan Houston, 2 votes I gave to Connor Rozee, and the 1 vote I gave to Miles Bergman. Now, Houston off halfback was brilliant in this game. Gave a lot of drive off halfback. He was probably Port Adelaide's best by, I think, a pretty significant margin. Connor Rozee with the 2 votes, he's been brilliant this year. It's a little bit unfortunate for him because Zach Butters has been playing really well, that he's been a little bit overshadowed, but Connor Rozee and Zach Butters, they're going to be a lethal combination for Port Adelaide for years to come. And the reason why I gave Miles Bergman the 1 vote is because of his role that he played on Jeremy Cameron. Now, this 3-2-1 votes is not always a midfield thing, like I've mentioned multiple times. But sometimes it will be. Sometimes the midfielders will be the best player on the ground, which is, I mean, it's going to happen. And Miles Bergman would not have many disposals in this game. I think he would have only had like 10, maybe 15. But the role that he played on Jeremy Cameron was amazing. He didn't let... Jeremy Cameron did not score a goal all night, I believe. He may have kicked one early, I think. But in the second half, he was amazing. He was undersized, and he just... I mean, I didn't even think that Bergman could even do that sort of role. He's been playing a lot more half-back wingman this year. But to go back on to one of the best key forwards in the competition and lock him down and keep him out of the whole game was an amazing feat. So I had to give Bergman at least the 1 vote. After that, on a Friday night, we had the Brisbane versus Sydney game. Sydney did play pretty well till about a quarter and a half, and it almost looked like, to be honest, that Sydney could actually pull this game out and take a big scalp and maybe get the season back on track. But late in the first half, Sydney's gave away, I think, 2 or 3 50-metre penalties, which just gave Brisbane the momentum, and they looked like winning throughout the rest of the night. They only did win by 16 points in the end, but nonetheless, they did play... Brisbane definitely got their season back on track after 2 losses in a row to Adelaide and Hawthorn either side of the bye. So, I mean, Brisbane... And to be honest, the scoreboard did flatter Sydney. I mean, Brisbane had, I think, 11 more scoring shots. So, they should have won this game by a whole lot more. So, but nonetheless, the 3 votes I gave to Oscar McInerney, 2 votes I gave to Zach Bailey, and the 1 vote I gave to Harry Cunningham. Now, Oscar McInerney was massive in the ruck. He was just giving pure service to all the Brisbane midfielders, and I think that Tom Hickey's got a little bit of work to do. I know he came back from an injury, but McInerney was really, really good, and I think that Sydney need the first touch, as we've said, maybe because they're not playing very well in the midfield this year, and if they're not getting first service, they're getting dominated in the midfield every week. Zach Bailey was brilliant in this game, definitely brought Brisbane back into the game late in the first half. He kicked 2 goals, 3, but, I mean, he should have kicked a lot more. But he definitely played very well in this game, and I think he was Brisbane's best small player of the game, like midfielder and that. In the 1 vote, I did give to Harry Cunningham, pretty similar to how Bergman in the last game got the 1 vote. This is amazing from Harry Cunningham. He kept Charlie Cameron to 0 goals. He kept him to about 7 touches the whole night. And he's been the best small forward of the comp this year, Charlie Cameron. And for Harry Cunningham to lock down Cameron and keep him with no influence on this game was a massive game from him. So I had to give him a vote for that. After that, we get to Giants versus Fremantle. This was a pretty big game for Fremantle because they had to stay in touch with the 8, and the Giants just overpowered them. Freo did not look like they wanted to play any sort of defensive pressure on this game, and to come out 70-point winners against Fremantle was a massive win for the Giants. And I think I've said this a few times, and I know my brother has as well, Jackpot Junkies. By the way, sorry I haven't mentioned this, but he's got work the next couple of days, so I had to get the podcast out. So he should be back next week. But we've been saying that Adam Kingsley is definitely the coach for the Giants, and they could make a late push through the finals, the Giants. I don't think they'll make it, but if they keep on winning these games, they're looking very good for the rest of the season. They've got a very good midfield. I think they could definitely... They're definitely going to be one of those teams that will keep the top 8 teams honest. So you won't be able to just bank a win against the Giants this year. But nonetheless, the 3 votes. 3 votes to Josh Kelly, 2 to Riccardi, and the 1 vote to Toby Green. Now, 3 votes to Josh Kelly. He was massive in this game. 30-plus touches. He kicked 3 goals as well. That's just a midfield performance that you love to see. He's been out for the past month through injury, so he was a big inclusion for the Giants in this match. And I do think that the Giants could definitely use a lot more goal-kicking midfielders. They probably don't get enough service out of their midfield, and I think that's the next step for them. And Josh Kelly, being such a lethal user of the ball, if he can start getting some goals as well, he can definitely push this team back into finals contention in the next few years. Now, Riccardi was very interesting. He's been out of the team for a lot of this season, but the last few weeks he's definitely grown into a key forward that the Giants can definitely utilise. He kicked 5 goals in this game, and if it wasn't for Kelly having a massive game, he would have been 3 votes by far. And the 1 vote, Toby Green, arguably the best player of the year so far, outside of maybe Zach Butters, and maybe that's about it. Toby Green has been massive. He kicked 4 goals yet again, and the Giants are going to be a hard team to beat this season. I don't think... And they're a good team to watch too. So if Adam Kingsley can get that defensive pressure, which they haven't really seen since really the inauguration of this club, they've been a pretty team. But if he can add some grunt to them, like Tom Green can bring, and they can bring that along, I think they're definitely a chance in the next couple of years to really skyrocket. After that, we get to Richmond versus St Kilda. This was a massive game for Richmond and the Saints, really. Richmond, it was a wet game. It was a really dirty sort of football game. But Richmond did get away with it in the end. St Kilda had their chances in the final quarter but couldn't convert. And led by Tim Taranto, Trent Cotchin, Dustin Martin, Nick Vlosten, there were a lot of players for Richmond who played really well in this game. And they're kind of pushing towards the finals now. They've won 3 in a row. They're definitely going to be like the Giants. They're going to keep the top teams honest. And they could definitely push towards the 8 if those players can keep their form as well. They were massive. Now, the 3-2-1 votes, I gave Taranto the 3 votes. He was massive. Trent Cotchin, I gave the 2 votes, and the 1 vote I gave to Dustin Martin. Tim Taranto was massive in this game. Got 38 disposals, a lot of clearances, kicked the ceiling goal. Massive game from Tim Taranto, and he's definitely pushing himself for a Brownlow. I know that some people will say that he doesn't have the best disposal efficiency, and I get that. But I don't think that's his role. I mean, Paddy Dangerfield has been known as the best player in the AFL for, well, not the best player, but he won a Brownlow a couple of years ago, 2017, I believe. And I mean, he didn't have the best disposal efficiency by far, but he gets the ball out of the middle and he gets the clearances. And sometimes it's not going to work, but sometimes it will. And that's what he's there for Richmond. And I think he's been a very good recruit this year. Probably been the best recruit of anyone. Trent Cotchin was massive in this one. Kicked a couple of goals and was just massive in the middle. He had about 29 touches. He's sort of brought back the form that we've seen in previous seasons. People may have said his career was done, and I was probably one of them. But in the last month or so, he's definitely brought back that grunt that Richmond have definitely needed. And the 1 vote went to Dusty Martin. He's definitely bringing back his form that what he's missed previously. I'll be interested to see where they play him for the rest of the season. He didn't kick a goal in this game. I think he kicked 3 behind. So, nonetheless, Dusty was very good in this one as well. After that, we get to Carlton versus the Gold Coast. And Carlton finally break the 6-game drought. They finally got a win against the Gold Coast Suns at the MCG on Sunday afternoon. Do I think Carlton are back? No, by any means. I don't think they are. I think that they should be winning this game at home against the Gold Coast, who really haven't proven themselves in Victoria in the past. See, a 10-goal win is pretty good, and I would like to quickly say that Adam Cerra was massive in this game, and this was a game that Carlton fans would want to see from him, not getting 35 touches and having no influence. He had a massive game in this one, and I think I mentioned last week that he's one of the most overrated players in the AFL. I don't know if he saw that from me, and I know that sound a bit mean, but I mean, I think he has been pretty overrated this year, and I don't know why people keep on saying that he's playing okay and being Carlton's best. Maybe he's been Carlton's best, but they're not exactly playing that good of football to have a best player right now. But nonetheless, he played really well. So the 3-2-1 votes, 3 votes to go to Adam Cerra, 2 votes to Paddy Cripps, and the 1 vote to Sam Doherty. Adam Cerra, like I said, was massive in this game. He only had about 25 touches, so I don't actually think he reached his seasonal average. But he kicked 2 goals. He had a lot more influence on this game, and I think this is the footy that Carlton fans want to see from Cerra. They wouldn't want to see a 35 possession game and having no influence on the game. They want to see him have 25 touches, and if they can start getting some goals out of their midfield, they could have a pretty good second half of the season, Carlton. And speaking of midfield goal kickers, Paddy Cripps was massive in this game. He kicked 3 goals, and to be honest, their key forwards in Mackay and Curnow didn't have a huge influence on this game. I know Mackay did kick 3 goals, but Curnow only got 1, so 4 goals between them guys. They needed their other players to chip in, and these midfielders did. I mean, they kicked 18 goals in the end, so 14 goals came out of other avenues than just Mackay and Curnow. So if they can find different avenues towards goal, Carlton, they're definitely going to have a better second half of the season. And the 1 vote I gave to Sam Doherty, I think he's been quite down for this last 6 weeks especially, and he definitely has lifted in this game. I don't know if they're going to keep on playing him in the midfield. I still think he's a defender, but at this stage, I think that he definitely had a good game in this one. And finally, we get to North Melbourne versus the Bulldogs. Now, North Melbourne, I think, actually did pretty well to stay with the Bulldogs all day because, I mean, the amount of goals that they were getting from other avenues other than Norton and Ugle-Hagan was actually pretty impressive from the Bulldogs. Obviously, coming off a 3-game losing streak, they needed to pull this game. And yet again, kind of like Carlton, I don't think this proves much for the Bulldogs at the moment because, I mean, they should be beating North Melbourne every day of the week. But, I mean, the 21-point win is good enough. And, I mean, the 3-2-1 votes, 3 to Cody Waitman, 2 to Marcus Bontempelli, and the 1 vote to Tim English. Waitman had to get the 3 votes here. He kicked 6 goals, career high, was massive for the Bulldogs this game. Bontempelli nearly beat him, though. He did get 3 goals in this game, Marcus Bontempelli, 25-plus disposals, 11 tackles as well, I believe. So, Bontempelli was massive in this game, and he's if not one of the Brownlow favourites right now, he's definitely an All-Australian midfielder and could also be the captain of this All-Australian team at the end of the year. And Tim English, he's basically a lock for that All-Australian ruck role right now. He's been the best ruckman of the year, and I don't think that maybe Sean Darcy or Rowan Marshall would be up there right now. But other than that, I think Tim English has got that locked down. So now, guys, that we're done with round 14, we'll now be moving into round 15 with our weekly tips. And, of course, this will be the last week of the buys. So after this, we'll hit round 16, the last 8 rounds, because we have 24 rounds this year. And we'll be hitting the final straps towards the end of the season. But we do have some massive games in round 15. And we'll start with the first one down at GMHBA Stadium, Geelong versus Melbourne. This is massive for Geelong. If they don't pull this win, they are definitely they could almost miss the finals from this. They do have a couple more games down at GMHBA Stadium against some pretty easy opponents, so they don't exactly have to win this game, but they're going to be in real trouble if they don't. I am going to be tipping Melbourne in this one because I think they're in better form, and Melbourne have proven that they can go down into Geelong and win down there. I do give Geelong a bit of a chance, though, because they do come off the buys not the best sometimes, so I'm not exactly saying that they're off right now, but I think Melbourne match up pretty well with Geelong, so I'm going to be giving Melbourne this one. After that, Friday night, we have St Kilda versus Brisbane. This is basically a 50-50 in my opinion. St Kilda at Marvel are a lot better, but Brisbane not at the MCG will definitely be happy about that. If this was at the MCG, I'd be giving it to St Kilda, and if this is at the Gabba, I'd be kicking Brisbane. But at Marvel, it's 50-50 at this stage. The only reason why I'm going to go with Brisbane is because they're higher on the ladder. That's the only reason. And plus, I think that St Kilda's defense is a little bit shaky lately. They conceded 90 points against Richmond in the wet, when in previous, earlier on in the season, they were lucky to be conceding 70, St Kilda. So I think Brisbane's forward line can definitely get on top of St Kilda, and I think that Brisbane will win this one. After that, we get to Saturday afternoon, Sydney versus West Coast. Look, Sydney should win this game. They shouldn't have any sort of issues at the SCG against the West Coast Eagles. However, Sydney have not been in very good form. They've been in pretty poor form, in fact. The only game they've played really since Gather Round that they've played well is the game against Carlton, where they just scraped home. Now, yes, they've been in some other games, but I don't think... As a Swan supporter, I've been very disappointed with their year. I will say one thing, that I think maybe last year they kind of jumped the gun that a lot of teams expected, like a lot of people would have expected, including themselves. So I think this year, I wouldn't say it's a write-off, but I would say at this point that they wouldn't be too concerned about the future going on. I do think that Sydney, though, need to recruit some players, because I think it was a huge mistake that they only recruited one player in the trade period last year, in the free agency period, and picked up Aaron Francis. I think that if a team is not, evolving and moving forward with new recruits, I think they're going backwards, and I think that's what Sydney did on this year. And I think they need to go to the trade period, which they have already said that they're going to be looking for more recruits this year, with probably the retirement of Buddy Franklin, and get some more salary cap space. But at this stage, I think Sydney are going backwards. But sorry about that. That's not what we're talking about. I'm picking Sydney in this one. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. After that, we get to another 50-50 game in Fremantle versus Essendon. If this was in Melbourne, I'd be picking Essendon every day of the week. But because this is in Perth, Essendon don't have the best record over in Perth. And even though Freo, are pretty good over in Perth, they did not look good against the Giants. I am going to be picking Fremantle, and I'm going to say why. Because they have to respond. That was a terrible game against the Giants. They're always good at home. I do give Essendon a bit of a chance, though. And if Essendon, I think when I mentioned in the video last week about the season predictions, if Essendon can just bank a couple of these 50-50 games, they will make finals this year. If Essendon can win this game, this would be massive for the push towards the end of the season. This would be a massive game for Essendon. But I think Fremantle will just scrape home in this one. After that, we get to Collingwood versus Adelaide on a shocking time slot for this one. Sunday early game. This is a terrible time slot for such a big game for both teams. Adelaide coming off the bye. If this is at Adelaide Oval, I'd be giving Adelaide a real chance here. But at the MCG, I think Collingwood are going to be hard to beat. Both teams coming off the bye, so, they'll both be really fresh, so this will be really good. Both teams probably at their peak, really, at the moment. Collingwood did obviously come off the loss against Melbourne King's birthday, so Collingwood would definitely be wanting to respond, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be tipping Collingwood. I do give the Crows a bit of a chance, though, because I think their forward line could get on top if they do, say pretty solitary and don't let Darcy Moore continue to cut it off and intercept. So I do give the Crows a bit of a chance because their forward line is very dangerous, but I think Collingwood, you have to tip them. At the MCG, basically been the best team in the comp this year. You have to tip Collingwood. In the final game of round 15, we have the Gold Coast versus Hawthorn. Big game for the Gold Coast. They definitely have to bounce back after that shocking performance against Carlton. It is at home for them, so that do give them a pretty big chance here. But Hawthorn have been in pretty good form, despite the game against Port Adelaide. They've been in pretty good form, the Hawks. But the reason why I'm going to be going with the Gold Coast Suns is because James Sicily is out, and Hawthorn's defence won't hold up. I think Gold Coast win this one, and I think pretty comfortably. But yeah, guys, those are the tips for round 15. So finally, we will be moving into the AFL Fantasy for this week. I had a pretty decent week. I think my rank actually went up. I'm currently ranked 1178. My score was okay, I guess. My brother scored more than me, so I'm a little bit disappointed by that. I got 1893, which, I'll take. Considering, I was happy that the fact I had captain on Tim Taranto, 147. I also had Marcus Bontempelli with the 158. I had a lot of good scores as well with Goulden 100, Cornelio 100, Rosie 100. Sheldrick was very good with the 82, playing as an in this week. I was a little bit disappointed by Jack Zeeble and Tom Stewart, and also Daniel Rioli, to be honest. That was pretty disappointing. I know that Tom Stewart got kind of tagged somewhat, but they didn't let him intercept marks, so they were never going to... That was always going to be a bit tough for him to score with no intercepting. Wardlaw only got 31, so that's a little bit disappointing, but you can't really expect a lot from a teenager every single week, can you? And yeah, I think I was pretty happy with the rest of them. Jack Steele, I've got to start getting rid of. I don't care what Ross Lyon's saying. He is definitely playing injured. But nonetheless, we get to the trades. So my trades this week are I got rid of Wardlaw for Lohman, who's the Brisbane player who came in this week. I got rid of Daniel Rioli finally because of obviously his buy, and I got Jordan Dawson. And my final trade is I got rid of Cornelio for Zach Merritt. Now the only reason why I got rid of Stephen Cornelio this week is because I need to have 18 players, and I'm not sure if I'm going to have it. So I'll get Zach Merritt this week, which is always good. And then next week, when the buy rounds are finished, I'm planning on getting rid of Ashcroft, and I'm gonna get Cornelio back in the team because Cornelio is definitely back in this team. He needs to be. But at this rate, yeah, I'm looking in the next couple of weeks to get rid of probably Steele. Other than that, though, that's pretty much my team. Like, for the rest of the year, not my team for the rest of the year, but I don't really have to make a lot of changes on the aspect of having rookies in my team. Really, the only one that I have now is Sheasel from the start of the season. It's like a rookie. But other than that, really, my team's all set up now. If I had them right now, I think I've got a full team of players that are in this team every single week that I can rely on. So really, the only reason why I need trades now is for players who are severely out of form, like a Jack Steele, or players who get injured, which I just don't have to plan for, which is fair enough. Probably Ben Hobbs as well, especially when Darcy Parish comes back. I think that I will have to get rid of Ben Hobbs eventually. But yeah, that's probably the only thing I have to worry about too much going into the rest of the season because my team's pretty well set up. And hopefully with a couple of rookies that I've got right now in Lohman. I also picked up Jasper Fletcher last week because he was in. He played really well as well against the Swans. I mean, he only got 56, but he definitely showed a lot. So I think he'll definitely be sitting in the Brisbane lineup for quite a while. But yeah, guys, that's really all we've got to talk about for today's podcast. I know it was a bit of a quick one, but because there was only 6 games this week, and my brother's not here to really talk back to, it's really not like I can keep on talking and have a conversation with someone. So yeah, sorry about that, but he'll be back next week. And we're up to episode 16 now, so we're getting towards the end of the season. I did see a lot of support for the last couple of videos that we put out. The prediction one and the trade rumors as well. So like we said, with the trade rumors videos, we're probably going to be doing them maybe 2 weeks every 2 weeks to monthly, especially if some news comes out. But if we do it every single week, we're not going to be able to have the same thing to talk about, and there's not really any point. But yeah, guys, that's the end of the Boundary Riders podcast for this week. So make sure to drop a like. Let us know down in the comments what you're thinking of the videos so far on the channel. Oh, and also, thank you for 50 subscribers. We're at 54 now, and for an AFL channel to hit 50 subs is actually really cool. So I really appreciate it. I just let my brother know, and he was really happy about that too. So also a good thing as well is YouTube have actually lowered their YouTube partnership, which obviously means you can get paid for it, down to 500 with 3,000 watch hours. So if we were able to hit that by the end of the season, or probably not the end of the season, but by the end of the year maybe, that would be really cool. The live stream's going to keep on happening. Sorry I only was able to do one this week, but I had some stuff going on, so I couldn't do an extra live stream for any of the games this week. But I think I'm going to be doing a couple this week for the round, because there's going to be a couple of really awesome games. I'm definitely going to try and do the Geelong-Melbourne game, and maybe even the Essendon-Fremantle game. Those games look really interesting. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching the Boundary Riders podcast, and we'll catch you all next week.